First day of camp vibes, and not only was it hot in Houston, but it was hot at training camp. Both D'Amico and CJ very vocal about the differences in this year's offense, and the fight to the final five begins now.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Thank you for listening to me, your host, Texans credential media member and football analyst, John Hickman. Today's show is all about the first day of training camp. It was hot outside. It was hot in the press conferences. It's been hot with Houston. They've been a hot topic in the sports world. Was it Bobby Sloyd? Can CJ Stroud bounce back from a quote-unquote sophomore slump? Today was day one of putting narratives to the side and getting back to what really matters, and that's football. Today's show, we'll dive into what really matters for the Houston Texans. They can't get too ahead of themselves, have to continue to operate in the now in order to be ready for week one. The final five fight begins now. What is the final five? Y'all know what it is. The offensive line, final five. The starters, the first team guys that was out there in OTAs early in the offseason, they look the same on day one. So what does that look like, and how will that eventually impact the Houston Texans offensive line for week one? Kicking off this episode, just looking at offensive identities and the differences between Nick Caley in 2025 and Bobby Sloyd in 2024. And it sure does sound like there were some strays thrown out there. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Before we dive into the differences of the offensive identity, just want to give you guys some updates. Hey, listen, Nick Caserio praised Cade Stover in the press conference to kick it off on Wednesday. Said, "You'll be hard-pressed to find a player that's improved as much as Cade in the offseason." That's what you want to hear. You also want to hear that Brevin Jordan still got that speed, made a play. You can go find that play on the Texans social media page. You want to hear that those two guys are doing well. You want to hear some positive news from those two guys, because those guys are, essentially the floor raisers of that tight end room. And not even just a floor, the ceiling raisers as well. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of trust right now in Dalton Schultz internally, but those two guys need to be somewhat of a weapon, whether that's blocking out of the backfield, catching out of the backfield, stick routes, intermediate routes, just short routes to get the ball moving and possession going. Those guys will be counted upon heavily for the Houston Texans offense. Christian Harris didn't practice. Is on the active roster after missing some time in the spring and last year with a calf injury. EJ Speed worked alongside Azeez Al-Shaair a lot with first-team defense. Henry T also took some snaps. So as the president of the Henry T fan club, I don't know how it's looking for him. I know he'll make the roster. Will he be a starter? We'll see. Joe Mixon began training camp on the non-football injury list. Damian Pierce, along with four defensive linemen, Derek Barnett, Danico Autry, Foley Fadakowski, Kurt Hines, they all started on the physically unable to perform list. You got some guys that are expected to be maybe a starter in Foley Fadakowski. You also got some rotational guys. So eventually we'll see that those guys get on the field and practice in both rooms, running back and D-tackle, defensive line all together, but specifically D-tackle. It's a lot of competition there. So they need to get on the field whenever their bodies will allow them to. Is there a chance Tank Dell plays this year? D'Amico Ryan spoke, but did not give a timeline, and that is expected. Now let's get into the conversation. The difference in last season compared to this season is in the tone of the leaders of this team. Listen to both CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans give their, I think, honest opinions on the differences between this year's offense compared to last year's offense.
Yeah, I mean, this is more of a, quarterback's offense where, you're IDing, you're calling the shots, you're switching protections if you need, and it's really like just me in the center. So that's J-Pat or Juice. Got to have good communication with those guys and relay to everybody else what's going on. So, Nick is doing a great job teaching his staff. So is Jerry and Gerard. So, yeah, it's a lot more ownership.
What excites me most about Kaylee's offense is that it's evolving and it's being tailored toward the Houston Texans and the guys that we have on our roster. So what excites me the most is not just copy and paste from other places that he's been, and he's been very successful at other places, but he's been very, very thorough with the installation process of where do we want to put our guys, what position, what's the best spot for our guys to be in. So you look at it through that lens, it's going to be about the Houston Texans. And that's what I love most about the offense, is him being able to be adaptable and put our guys where they need to be.
You hear that straight from the leaders of the team, head coach D'Amico Ryan's, quarterback CJ Stroud. And you know what? Damn it, Bobby. Dang it, Bobby. Like, sure seems Bobby Sloyd caused some strays there. And I am wondering what the relationship was by the end of Bobby's tenure here in Houston. Not necessarily with CJ Stroud. Those reports came out, but more so with D'Amico Ryan's. They were buddies, but, that didn't seem like a goodbye type of send-off. And then maybe there was a shot at the national media with some of these rankings that's been coming out. But the truth is the truth. This offense will be diverse, and diversity brings creativity because of its working elements. What are the working elements? Well, if you're in the workplace and if you got people coming together from different backgrounds, what works well in groups like that, departments like that, the different backgrounds breeds different ideas, and different ideas you're able to form together to find out what works best to get the goal accomplished. For the Houston Texans, accomplishing the goal this year, let's just say, let's keep it real. We want to make it to the Super Bowl. Okay, that's fine. Well, you had an opportunity to do that last year. You was not able to score points. 8th in the NFL in points per game. One of the worst second half offenses in the NFL. They have to score points. And so with Nick Caley, coming from multiple backgrounds, he understands, like, I have to take what worked well in New England, what worked well LA, and put it together to figure out how can I enhance what worked well for the Houston Texans last year with the players that, was kept over, what's working well for the guys in preseason and training camp, and how can I maximize the talent on this team. The truth is the truth. Too many times in 2024, we were left questioning why certain players were constantly asked to perform assignments that didn't fit their play style. And I think that led to a morale decline on the offensive side of the ball. So for first day of training camp, to hear both D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud just kind of speak great about the offense under Nick Caley, that's what you want to hear. You want to hear from CJ Stroud, yeah, man, like, the ownership of the offense is what I've been looking for. He talked about it a lot last year, right, in certain ways, and maybe a little bit sneakier than most people could pick up on. But, like, the offense just wasn't fitting CJ Stroud. So now he has the offense that he wants for D'Amico Ryan, and I think more so for D'Amico because he had to make adjustments. And D'Amico Ryans is a guy that on the defensive side of the ball, I think he's made some great adjustments. At times we've questioned or wonder why he didn't make an adjustment, but understanding that the game is the game. In order for a team to be successful for 4 quarters, you go into halftime, the opposing team, especially if they're down, they're going to figure out a way to get back in the game, win the game. For the Houston Texans offensively, that never seemed to happen. So I was glad to hear on day one them come out and just speak about the differences in offense from this year compared to last year and how that will essentially play into the identity of the offense. You have an offense that can pretty much do different things well and won't get stuck in the box. You have a quarterback that can make every throw. You're looking at an offense that isn't limited. It could be very dangerous. Could be very dangerous. And so good to hear on day one. And also on day one, we got a little bit more of the insight on the fight to the Final Five. You heard it. We're going to hear from D'Amico Ryan, what he thinks about the offensive line compared to how they're competing now, compared to how they competed in OTAs where there was no pad on. Let me clean it up. Where there wasn't any pads on, right? So differences between then and now, and then what he's looking for. It wasn't even pads on for the offensive lineman on day one of training camp as well. So stick around. We got more Locked On Texans on the way. Day one of the Houston Texans training camp. And before we do that, this is the perfect time to give you guys some game, man. Monarch Money, they looking out for us. Managing your money can be difficult. Monarch Money makes it easier. With Monarch Money, whether you're growing your savings, planning for a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If you share finances with someone, Monarch helps you stay on the same page, right? And I think in this day and age, limiting outside distractions and making things easier for people, that's what you want. You ever wish you had all of your accounts and spending in one place? You can have that with Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. Once again, visit monarchmoney.com. And for my fellas out there, hey, listen, Rougiette, looking out for you. Rougiette, guys, you probably heard of Viagra, Cialis. Maybe you tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the unusual pills that can take hours, Rougiette 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even read real customer reviews on their website. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That is RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off at Rougiette.com. Bringing it back with more training camp talk, the offensive line discussion. The details matter and will play a role in who makes the final five. Listen, Nick Caserio believes they find the right offensive lineman with the right mindset. Let me say that again. Nick Caserio believes they signed the right offensive lineman with the right mindset, and it starts with new offensive line coach Cole Popovich. Also want to add no Trent Brown practicing Wednesday, and they are going to need the right guys because based on the eye test, let's go eye test alone. Texans were one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Oh, I don't think we're going to debate that. Like, that's a fact, right? That's on the eye test. Also, based on advanced metrics, just found this out. The Texans were tied for second in the NFL, 55 unblocked pressures. Jeez. You're not going to win a whole lot of games that way. You're going to keep your quarterback upright for him to be able to make plays in a pocket a lot that way. You're not going to be able to give an offense time to develop. You're going to constantly be pushed back behind a line of scrimmage. Your quarterback is constantly going to be under duress. So Caserio believes, we signed the right guys. Well, how does DeMeco Ryans feel?
For the O-line, Will, it's always tough when it's hard for me to, you continue to evaluate O-line. It's hard when you don't have pads on because that's how the game is played up front, O-line, D-line. You got to put the pads on to have a true evaluation of how that'll look. But the small things that stuck out to me and what Cole has done a really good job of, just those small, intricate details that they'll translate, pads or not, and that's hand placement, your feet being right, like where are your shoulders, where are your eyes, the communication, all of those little things that really allow those guys to bind together as one. I think that's where y'all see the growth in our offensive line. Those guys being on the same page, they're being intentional with how they're working an individual. It's very deliberate. And so I see that translates. And that's what I expect from all of our coaches, to be deliberate in how you prepare your guys individual. That's what I've seen throughout the spring with Cole, with Zach, and that will translate. It's shown up here. They've done a great job communicating today, and that'll keep allowing those guys to be the best version of themselves and do a great job of run blocking first and foremost as a unit, and then also protecting CJ.
Perfect. What stood out to me, because when we get the offensive line play, and that was a hot topic on social media Wednesday. I don't know if you guys caught it, but what stood out to me as someone who just loves good offensive line play, good trench play, be deliberate from a coaching perspective. That stood out to me because when you have the conversations of 2024, you don't know if the head offensive line coach is in or out, too many voices in the room. That creates a room of uncertainty. Uncertainty leads to the lack of cohesiveness. The lack of cohesiveness leads to 55 unblocked pressures. I think 12 in the postseason in 2 games. One of those games, he was sacked 8 times. That is like when you don't get it right at the beginning, when you get to the end, that's why. And also, if you listen to what DeMeco Ryan said, he mentioned the small details. For a lot of people, what the small details are for offensive linemen, the technical things. And he said he knows it'll translate. So I think DeMeco just came out on day one kind of firing. Like, hey, listen, when I look at what we went wrong with last year and what we're doing right now, details. We missed over it and glanced over the details. And we had guys in the building who didn't give a damn about details, who was not coaching the details. Not like what DeMeco Ryan's expectations are. And so with that being said, the first offensive line unit to go out there, Cam Robinson, and I think we can lock him in, right? Left tackle. Tomlinson, Jared Patterson, first team offensive line to kick it off. Titus Howard at right guard. Y'all gonna love this, right? The rookie, Ariante Ursary, went out there first team at right tackle. Second team, Ursary at left tackle, Juice Scruggs at left guard, Andrews at center. And, I think the battle between Andrews and Patterson, we can't glance over it. Howard at right guard. Howard's probably going to lock that right guard position up unless they seem like they want to put him over at right tackle. But Blake Fisher at right tackle. Hey, listen, man, I don't know. I think Blake Fisher he's working against some things, right? Number one, just being a part of a bad offensive line room, being a part of a room that, based off of everything we've heard consistently, was no real leadership, was no real coaching, was no real deliberate coaching, right? And lack of technicalities being taught, and that didn't translate, right? Fisher was on a very good offensive line in Notre Dame, was the right tackle. The left tackle for that team was Joe Alt, Notre Dame. They put out some good offensive linemen in the league. So I'm not going to call a young man a bust, but Fisher, who at one point I was campaigning to put him on the inside, and sometimes, when you're wrong, you're wrong. And I got to admit, I was wrong on that one. But Fisher has just been a player that it doesn't seem like he was ready, needed time. And when he was being forced out there hurt him more than it helped him. And for DeMeco and Cole Popovich and Nick Caley, okay, let's dial it back a little bit on that young man. obviously, Ariante Ursary, he was a player that a lot of people feel like could go in the first round, right? So to see him get out there and start, now, granted, there was no Trent Brown out there. So the thought process should have been, hey, we got to get Blake Fisher out there. But he wasn't out there. So do they view Ariante, the rookie, as the piece that, from a talent perspective, coming in that room? Because that room will need the talent, right? When you lose Larry Tunsil, you lose a big talent. So is Ariante Ursary viewed as the talent prospect that can help get the offensive line over the hump, that can raise where that offensive line can or cannot be? And I think that may be the case, especially him going out there day one with the first team offense. We gotta look at it for what it is. We gotta look at maybe Blake Fisher, who, second round pick in 2024. I hate to use this term, swing tackle, because it reminds me of tweeners in NBA and the tweener in NBA. I hate that term, but where is Blake Fisher right now on a totem pole in terms of starters? May seem like he's in that second tier of players who will be competing for the swing tackle spot. Not sure. But I think looking at what happened on day one, is it obvious that the confidence in that young man is not there yet? Which leads me to my last conversation. Look, what really matters for Houston? This is day one. We're diving into day one. What really matters for the Houston Texans as they kick off, as they've already kicked off training camp, and as they prepare themselves for one of the more coveted seasons in franchise history. New offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator, new offensive lineman, two rookies, new vets in, a lot of changes. What really matters for this team? Stick around. More Locked On Texans talk on the way. But this episode is presented by Yahoo. Yeah, this episode is presented by Yahoo, y'all. Football is back. And you know what that means? Fantasy football is back. Fire up them group chats. And get your draft board ready. Buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and the Locked On Network, Locked On Texas, we're playing some Yahoo Fantasy football, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. We should probably make a Locked On. For all of the listeners out there, if you put in the comment section, hey, I'm down to make a fantasy league, I'll make it. We should probably do a fantasy league, and I'll be down to steer that, right? Spearhead that. But you if you want to get started with fantasy, Yahoo Fantasy is where you need to go. I love Yahoo Fantasy. I've used it for years. I love how smooth the draft day experience is. Our leagues been running through Yahoo for a while. Easy setup, great mobile app, which is, if the mobile app is good, you got me hooked. And the smack talk just hits different in the message boards. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win it all. It all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get started creating or joining a fantasy league, a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Again, Yahoo fantasy.com. To close out today's episode, the conversation that we need to have: what really matters? One day at a time, batters. One day at a time. The Houston Texans are not going to be able to answer all of our questions day one. They're not going to be able to answer all of our questions day 2 or day 3. They're not going to be able to instill confidence back in us, whether we are media members watching and reporting and covering, whether we are fans. They're not going to be able to do all of that the first 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 days. What really matters for the Houston Texans, and I'm serious, man, because of the amount of newness, taking it slow is important. And taking it slow isn't just, in terms of time, but taking it slow in terms of the decisions that need to be made. And I talked about, hey, listen, they got one less week this year compared to last year. So they're going to have to be intentional in the decisions that they make, especially with the offensive line and filling out the 53-man roster. Right. But that doesn't mean they have to speed through it. Being intentional means taking time to your decision, because when you make that decision, you got to stick by it. And this is a team that has stuck by their decisions. Have those decisions always panned out? No. But this may be the most coveted season for the Houston Texans in their, 23 years, 24 years of them being around. So what really matters is for Nick Caley, I need to see of the final 5. Hey, Cole, after we're done with press conferences, after we're done with practice, we need an hour-and-a-half meeting. When I call this play, okay, what did you notice from your inside guys? What did you notice from your outside guys? How quickly were they moving? What was their lateral speed? Were they able to recognize things? Okay. Do you feel confident with the backs that we're putting out there? No Joe Mixon, no Damian Pierce. So we're seeing Nick Chubb get some run. I think that's great for Nick Chubb. Former all-pro running back, former starter in this NFL. If he didn't get hurt, he may be running to Canton right now. So it's important to see him out there on the field. He's getting going without having to worry about being yanked or whatever the case is. How did Nick Chubb look? How did he look? Still got some juice? Because what the offense is going to ask of some of these players that, if we're being honest, have big question marks, whether those question marks are from a schematic conversation or a health conversation, the question marks are there. How are they performing? How are they performing? Because when we make these cuts, when we make these decisions, we got to be sure. So, and I think we cannot overlook that matters. Defensively, because we get caught up in talking about what the offense needs to do, our confidence in the defense is so strong, and it should be. Defensively, we're going to move on from Jimmy or what? Because these guys are doing what we're asking of them. And Jimmy's a little older now. Defensively, and this may hurt for, it's coming from me, the president of the Henry T fan club, but the addition of EJ Speed, does that warrant more confidence in him on the field compared to Henry T? Does Christian Harris return warrants more confidence in him compared to Azeez right now? Defensively. So taking it slow, being intentional, and the word that should be the theme of the offseason, the term, whatever, being deliberate. Being deliberate. Because eventually this is going to fall back on 3 people. On the field, CJ Stroud. How can it fall back on him? Well, if you get another season of 55 unblocked pressures, it's going to fall back on him because he ain't going to get up. But it also falls back on D'Amico Ryans. It also will fall back on Nick Caserio. What I like, based off of what I'm hearing, everybody is in line. You don't have, like, if you create a line and halfway down, that line just shifts right, shift left, and then tries to come back down. No, it seems like everybody, for my holistic people, the chakras are aligned. The chakras. Everybody's on the same page. If you pick up the Texans book right now, everybody's on page 2025. Nobody's on page 2028. Nobody's on page 2022. Everybody's on the same page. So when judging what this team can or can't be, hey, man, D'Amico said it. It comes down to being deliberate. And being deliberate, you can't rush that. You need to trust the process. You never should rush the process. 2024 was a little bit of a rush process. It was. And it was a rush process that still led to 10 wins, winning the division, winning the playoff game in emphatic way, and still having a competitive divisional game where, you know, they were a quarter away from beating the Chiefs, making it to their first AFC Championship game. Like, they rushed it a little bit, still was a successful season. But this year, as long as they have D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud, every year we'll see more pressure build up. That's the facts. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Y'all know what to do, man. Subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Training camp is back, and I'm back 5 days a week. I'll be out there Friday. You're going to want to check that out as well. I'm getting information out to you. And with my 4 eyes and those 4 walls, we're going to see what all coming, right? You know what I'm talking about? So I can't wait to talk Texans with you guys. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, Texas fans across the nation, peace. Swarm on.